My name is Jessie Haley. It looks like I'm going to wait a couple minutes. Most people have connected to audio so you can hear me. Okay, it looks like almost everyone can hear me now. I'm Jessie Haley. I am the program manager for the program in creative writing at the University of Chicago. We are a co-sponsor of this event tonight. Thank you for coming. Our other co-sponsor, our host, is the Seminary Co-op Bookstores. I'm just going to say a brief blurb about the Seminary Co-op before I turn it over to the people you're all here to see. Many of you are probably familiar with the Seminary Co-op already, but if you're not, it's two bookstores, 57th Street Books and the titular Seminary Co-op bookstore. They're both in Hyde Park in Chicago. They're both amazing. The Seminary Co-op itself is known as an exemplary academic bookstore, and it has the literary and scholarly interests of its membership reflected on its shelves. Many of them are affiliated with its close neighbor, the University of Chicago, but not only. University of Chicago. And then 57th Street Books is more caters to literary interests of the surrounding community and has an amazing children's department, a great backlist. Both have a wonderful, knowledgeable staff. These are really important places to the community of Chicago, but also a larger community across the world. It was an actual co-op for decades, and now since very recently, late 2019, the Seminary Co-op bookstores became the country's first not-for-profit bookstores that have a primary mission of selling books. So you can support the Seminary Co-op by buying books, which you can do in a few different ways. You can order for curbside pickup. You can order for delivery locally, nationally, internationally. I ordered for a student the other day that's in Beijing. And you can also buy the book that we're talking about tonight there. So I'll put a link in the chat eventually. But we love the Seminary Co-op, and we love that they bring amazing artists and writers together like we're talking about tonight. So thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to Tina Post now.
Thank you so much, Jessie. So before I start, I will reiterate my thanks to Jessie Haley and Starsha Gill, our wonderful administrators in creative writing. Thank you to the creative writing department at the University of Chicago and the Seminary Co-op bookstores. It's my great pleasure to introduce everyone tonight. Oh, and I am Tina Post, Assistant Professor of English and Theater and Performance Studies at the University of Chicago. And before I introduce our wonderful guest tonight, I thought I would start in the way that we began events at the University of Alaska Anchorage when Elizabeth Bradfield and I were together for our MFAs, which was to always begin with the invocation of another person's work. And so to get us started tonight, and I will circle back to it in a minute, I'm going to read the poem Michiko Dead by Jack Gilbert. Michiko Dead. He manages like somebody carrying a box that is too heavy, first with his arms underneath. When their strength gives out, he moves the hands forward, hooking them on the corners, pulling the weight against his chest. He moves his thumbs slightly when the fingers begin to tire, and it makes different muscles take over. Afterward, he carries it on his shoulder until the blood drains out of the arm that is stretched up to steady the box and the arm goes numb. But now the man can hold underneath again so that he can go on without ever putting the box down. All right, so folks, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight. I will begin with Elizabeth Bradfield, who is the author of the poetry collections Once Removed, Approaching Ice, Interpretive Work, and the mixed genre Toward Antarctica, which pairs her photographs with brief hybrid essays. Her poems and essays have appeared in The New Yorker, The Atlantic Monthly, Orion, and many anthologies. She's been awarded a Stegner Fellowship, the Audre Lorde Prize, and was a finalist for the James Laughlin Award from the Academy of American Poets. Founder and editor-in-chief of Broadsided Press, she works as a naturalist and teaches creative writing at Brandeis University. Antonia Contro is a visual artist whose work ranges from discrete objects to site-specific installations and collaborations that engage artists and practitioners from a wide range of disciplines. Her art explores the nature of knowledge, memory, and time. Contro's exhibitions include Tempus Fugit at the American Philosophical Society Museum, Ex Libris at the Chicago Cultural Center, Closed Open at the Newberry Library, and describes a museum of contemporary photography. Contro's work is in the collection of the Art Institute of Chicago, Block Museum, Harvard Art Museums, and the Museum of Contemporary Art. Contro was awarded a Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship, an Illinois Arts Council Fellowship, and a doctorate in humanities honoris causa from Lewis University. And last but not least, my co-moderator tonight, Angel Izaguirre, who's the executive director of the Court Theater, the professional theater at the University of Chicago. Prior to joining the Court Theater, Izaguirre served as the executive director of Illinois Humanities. During his tenure there, the organization established a number of new programs demonstrating the contribution that the humanities can make in addressing today's most pressing challenges. Previously, he was the director of global community investing at the Boeing Company and a program officer at the McCormick Tribute Foundation. He served on the boards of the Theater Communications Group, Donors Forum of Chicago, the Illinois Center for the Book, Horizons Community Service, Blair, Thomas and Company, and Next Theater. So with that, I think I'll give you a quick rundown of the evening. I'm going to start by asking Liz to read Theorem for you all so you can just luxuriate in this book. And then I'll start asking Liz questions and then sort of pivot toward Antonia. And then Angel will join the conversation as we start to think through the future lives of Theorem. One of the really beautiful and exciting things about this project is that it continues to evolve in shape and form. So with that, I will hand it over to Liz.
Thank you, Tina, and thanks for that Jack Gilbert poem. Thank you everyone for coming. It's such a pleasure to be here from Cape Cod, which is where I live, with my dear collaborator, Antonia Contro, with you, Tina, my dear friend from our MFA days in Anchorage, and with Angel, who I know more recently through Antonia, and just the vibrant community that University of Chicago brings together. This book, Theorem, is a collaboration between myself and Antonia. Her images, my words, and it began 3 years ago on Cape Cod, where Antonia for many years has constructed for herself a residency time apart to work and think. And we met through mutual friends and talked for a long time about collaborating, and after many years, landed upon this. And we can talk more about that later. But as Tina said, I think just beginning with the book itself, with the images, the words, the quietness of it, might be a nice way for us to kind of settle in, become present, and enter this conversation. So I'm going to share my screen. And we're just going to have a little story time. At 13, I fell in love with the tidy solutions of geometry. Neat in my notebooks, they made architecture of chaos, denoted all I could not allow myself to say, contained it in measurable forms. But something pulsed. Formulas and proofs were fingers caged around a bright, quick thing, trapped but not bruised, not even close, but bruisable, a sort of bird. This is a story of a secret, of secrets, of becoming from and alongside them. What could allow me to approach myself, my secrets, safely? Even now they have power. Something had begun to flow through my body's passages. If I opened my hands, what would be revealed? I knew. Dark matter, strange attractions, an unknown universe. Was it safe? I didn't know. But stars shone there. I sensed them. And they were not tired, told fate, but projected escape. Math made map. A sky blanketing that could open and open to the breathless, unheld. There were 5 of us, plus the dog and the dog that died, no others. I was one of 3 sisters. For so long, I didn't know what shape I was. Did I have to have one? I learned the horizon's distance can be calculated by your height above sea level. The oldest, first to emerge, I was looking at a different distance than my sisters, or the same view, differently. I know, so were they. I did not know what, aside from me, was precarious. But physics tells us that once in motion, even the smallest things, given length of run and type of terrain, can carve huge swaths. We grew into other calculations, more complex math. Our mother kept track of us on a tug company calendar hung inside the ironing board cupboard. Each boxed day was marked with the tide sine curve, predictable flood and ebb rising and falling across the weeks. But don't forget, all this was created by the moon. I did not mean that to happen. To cube is to find the 3 of x. It is to leave the plane, thus permitting shadow. Our edges touched, our stories abutted, the same light struck us at different times. Something was on approach from elsewhere. I was known as a secretive child. Not at first, but later, maybe starting then. I could not find what was growing in me within any of the books on the shelves of our house. There was no guide available. I could not identify either what was growing in my sisters beside me, or how, or why, or into what. Photomorphs, we grew differently, even as our roots all pulled from the same soil. I grew up on the wet side of Western mountains, yet I don't really remember rain. I was very good at forgetting. I still am. I grappled with rum lines, arced routes that look longer on the map, but my dad said actually take less time to travel. The math worked, but storms still howled out of who knows where, shifting the courses of even huge ships. How are my sisters navigating? I didn't even think to wonder. No flat map shows the world's true shape. We mislearn extremities and peripheries from the start. What else have I erased? How can I know? This is the only way I can write about it, the only way I will. I promise. One secret has stepped out into light, has long glowed luminous. How ridiculous now, its early, confused fear. The other is not mine to tell. A dark, dense absence, a singularity. I can only measure what it has bent, the adjustments made to avoid its pull. It ghosts me. Is there a truth it holds? Too close for any perspective or clarity, how can I ever know? Look, I can pretend to see things two ways, but the gut is singular and stubborn. It knows what it first knew as true. There is one form, one story, one vessel I keep seeing. And really, it is two stories, two cubed, unfolding at once, recombinant, flowing into and through each other, forging a unique amalgam. There were 5 of us and a dog, only one dog at a time, no one else. The results are fractal, the trajectories radiate. Something happened to me and not to me. It divides, absolutely. What was created in its chaos, light, dust, shadow, for me, for my sisters, for us all? I am still trying to map it. I am still trying to calculate what can be traced to its red-shifted source. So that is Theorem, everybody. Thank you for entering into story time with me.
Thank you. So I'll start with a question to Liz while the text is fresh in our minds, and then we'll move into the images some. So I opened with the Jack Gilbert poem in Chico Dead because, as Liz and I have discussed before, and as you audience members hopefully just heard, the central theme of Theorem is the carrying of difficult emotions, the process of negotiating that carriage, and the shifts in that weight over time. And one of the most remarkable things about this text to me is the tension between airiness and density. There's so much white space in this book, something that's so often associated with breathing room. And yet the lines here carry so much the weight of the secret. And I wonder if you, Liz, could talk a little that quality and how you were able to instill the sense of heaviness in these sparse, beautiful lines.
Thank you for that question. And that Jack Gilbert poem is one I carry with me all the time. It's such a beautiful poem. I will say that I don't, as a writer, the voice of this book is very different than my other books. It's very different than the way I usually approach curiosity and investigation in poems. And that's really a direct response to having the images and the words be able to be there together, and the images to be able to speak, and the text to be able to respond to what the image suggests and maybe direct in a different direction. And I really wanted a lot of space so that back and forth, that questioning of how is this coming from this image? Where is this leading us? What is the anchor here? Could have a little bit of space around it. And I think in looking at images, I haven't said this before, but I think when I look at images, there's a lot of silence for me and a lot of questioning. And I wanted the text to kind of occupy that contemplative space also. And I don't know how people dance around things that are in their lives that are important and significant, and yet you're not really willing to discuss. How do we acknowledge those things? How do we hold those things? And so for me, the benefit of having a lot of white space is the opposite variness, right? It's the silence around speaking, and it's almost like a pressurization upon the words also. And so I think all of those things are being enacted for me in the page by page experience of Theorem and its physicality, and then also in the story that's being told or not told in the book.
Great, thanks. And speaking of physicality, I wonder if perhaps both of you would like to talk some about the fact that this is now the second iteration of the book, the first being an artist book, and talk a little bit about maybe perhaps how the collaboration worked process-wise, and then also the material product that first came out of it that is now reborn in this beautiful book.
Antonia, you want to start?
Sure. I will say that it is, for us, being artists of different disciplines, it was an extraordinary opportunity and satisfaction to be able to create these two editions, and for two publishers of these different types of books to want to make them with and for us. The fine arts publisher, Contro, is here in Chicago. And we were thrilled to work with them because of their very careful, artful way of making small edition handmade books. And they were very open to the challenges that this book presented. And what was really important to Liz and me was somehow finding a way to bind these winnowing signatures. Oh, great, Liz has it, yeah. So, you know, the book, in terms of the construction and binding of a book, was no easy feat, and they figured that out. I hand worked each of these books. It's a very small edition, excuse me there. And then we, you know, had this opportunity to work with Poetry Northwest Editions to produce the edition that you're looking at tonight. So it's been a really great, not only has it's in a way, it's really underlined and I think reflected the collaboration that we have had together.
I see a question in the chat. Were the poems written in response to the images the other way around? And the poem was written in response to the images. And I do have, Antonia, as I said before, gave herself residencies on the Cape, and we talked about collaborating with interest, but on my part, curiosity and also a little nervousness. I mean, collaboration is a big commitment, and what if it doesn't work out? What if? But in 2017, Antonia gave me a book that she had made from her artist books. Oh, good, she's holding it up. From pages from these amazing artist books that she had made. And she's like, well, what about this? So I was like, yeah, all right. How about, great. Why don't you leave that with me? And then I started writing from the images, and over time developed the idea of Theorem, which was so tied to the images, to the progress of the images, to the fact that the pages winnowed. And then we started talking and refining what was there, pulling some images out, adding some text, really engaging in a true collaboration, talking about what was there and how it might become fully itself, rather than illustration on either side. So it began with Antonia's images, and then it became a really rich exchange of conversation. And I don't know, how else would you describe it, Antonia?
You're doing a great job, Liz. I think that I'd add that all the way along, we were both very conscious of and dedicated to how the words and images related. I did not want the images to be perceived as illustrating the text. And, the same for Liz. I think she wanted the words to have their autonomy, but yet, we were intent on creating a very dynamic and emotional and psychological relationship between these two forms. And, I thought quite a bit about how a material, when I think about books, and books are both in form and concept, a big part of my work independent of Theorem, I think about how a material object and of the book and the physical experience of it can activate and sort of convey the emotional and psychological impressions of a lived experience. And that was something we worked very diligently at. Again, we didn't want to describe or illustrate either Liz's experiences. And I never want my images to be, though I often work in representation, to be too literal or descriptive, as I think that closes down the potential of where the work can go.
Thank you. So if I can, I want to leave time for audience questions, but if I can perhaps ask Antonia to speak with a little more specificity about one or two of the images, the black dividing line or the traffic cone you mentioned to me, and then ask Angel to talk a little bit about the performance to be, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Sure, and I can be brief, but these are images that have been really, I think they're amongst my personal favorites, but I think they played a really profoundly pivotal role in the book. Liz, can you show the line? Okay.
The line? Yeah.
Line, as we call it, actually, I sort of view as the major protagonist in Theorem. The line sort of did some role switching and changing. It had this kind of almost acrobatic shifting. A number of, the cover, for those of you who have it, is the line, but that is positioned to really suggest a horizon line. And almost, it could be perceived as, the silhouette of mountains or a landscape. But then as when you move further into the book, it pivots into a vertical position, and it becomes this moment of real gravitas in Liz's writing. It divides absolutely. And so I really liked the almost, performative role that the line had. It also appears in a subtle iteration one more time in the book, and in a place where I really love Liz's writing. It's the "It Ghosts Me" page, when there are these two cups or vessels that it sort of becomes a horizon line or a shelf or a kind of measuring device. It's ambiguous, but it reappears throughout. Liz, anything you'd add to that about the line and what it meant to you?
It's interesting. Obviously, the line felt significant in the book as a divider. I love the little ghost of those candlestick figures that exists behind the line in graphite. But I don't think when I know that when I wrote in response to Antonia's images, I didn't anticipate that it would become the cover. I didn't expect exactly that it would become a defining image. And it's interesting. It's interesting also, it's become a print that Antonia, in conversation with me, but mostly Antonia, has developed. And I think so much about this idea of what divides absolutely. And right now, there are so many things that feel like they divide absolutely in this moment, these defining moments in this time in our lives, from our past, from this present, the then and now, the here and there, these fissures, and yet these moments that we're able to step over and continue. So I never anticipated when we began this project that would be a defining element of it. And I'm really grateful that it has. And I think what I'm grateful for in working on this project with Antonia is the opportunity to learn as I think about the images, as I think about the text, as the conversation evolves. And writing can be instinctual. It is instinctual. I think for me, writing is a place of exploration, and then always with that in revision. And there's a lot of revision in this work too. You backtrack to figure out why something is important, why this came to be, why this feels emotionally resonant, why this is the outcome of this progression. And that rich exploration and what it's revealed in the line has been super fascinating to me.
Thank you.
And thanks, Liz. And I'll just say very quickly, this tiny cone, which is a very subtle image, and you won't see it well.
I'll bring it up.
Oh, great. Okay. So First of all, for me, I just think in this very focused way, it's this extremely subtle, intimate, vulnerable image that is almost floating in this enormous amount of white and seemingly ungrounded space, but it holds its ground, this little triangle, and it stands firmly and stoically in all of this, in this sort of infinite space. And then there's this little orb that floats above it. And it's had multiple resonances for me as well, as almost a planet or a crown. But I will say that next to or in relationship to Liz's writing, it seemed like such an essential, as I was of so many of my images, I just was devoted to this one being in the book.
And I think that idea of math and science holding emotion or helping us to navigate difficulties in our lives, abstraction, helping to be a container for or a way of understanding and grappling with emotion. For me, that's one of the fascinations for Theorem. I love math. I love geometry. I love mapping. I love all of those things. And I know you do as well, Antonia. And yet they're often seen as very cold disciplines. But how else do you understand these mysterious terrains that we hold in our memory, in our body, in the world around us?
That's a lovely thought. Thank you. Angel, do you want to talk about the performance life of Theorem for a moment, and then we'll see what other questions people might have.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much, Tina. I actually don't know what the performance will entail. I think I know that it's a partnership or a collaboration with Spectral Quartet, which is a new music or classical music ensemble here in Chicago. And I've been following Theorem since it was becoming an art book, and now as it becomes this really amazing paperback. And I've followed the partnership between Antonia and Liz, and I'm just really curious about what happens as yet another major partner comes in, which is Spectral Quartet. And if I can just, make a couple of my own observations. One is that, I've been following Antonia's artwork for, I think 2.5 decades now. And in my experience of Antonia's artwork, they're very object focused, even though her objects, while they're often sort of a figurative object, they're more evocative than literal, I think, in the way that we experience them. And then Liz brings to this collaboration, as you said, Tina, this sort of all of this space. You can't read this poem fast because of the way in which she's constructed lines. And there's this incredible relationship between the words and the images, in which memory, I think, is so important. There are times when you see an image and then you turn the page and you read the words, and the image is in your memory as you read the words. And then there are times when you're reading the words and then you flip the page and you see an image. And you're still sort of speaking those words in your mind as you encounter the image. I wonder, as yet another set of collaborators comes in, or another collaborator comes in, how, Antonia and Liz, I'm wondering what is essential, like, as you think about this piece of art that you've made, what is essential, and thus what must be conveyed in this next iteration, which is not object focused. I mean, it's not I don't think there's going to be an artifact in the way that there's an artifact in the artist's book or in this paperback.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll say a couple things, then I'm curious to hear what Antonia has to say. I think, so the future of this project involves Clara Lyon, who's a violinist with the Spectral Quartet, the composer Eliza Brown, who's making music in response to Theorem, also the animator Joseph Meredith, and then the set designer Andrew, oh my God, Antonia, what's his last name?
Voice.
Thank you, Boyce. So we're all working together to create this next iteration of Theorem, which will be a performance, an installation. It'll have material objects, but it'll also be sonically based. And for my part, I'm super curious and trying to be as open as possible to what that interpretation will lead. And I've kind of assigned myself, I've made up a role for myself. My role is story keeper, because I think what's most important to me is that whatever happens, however the images move, however the sound moves, I don't want that to be a betrayal of the story. The story is important to me. And I'm curious and open, but I also feel like if there were an emotional move in how this work evolves that feels like it's antithetical to what is the core of what I feel the story is, then we'll have to talk. But so far it hasn't felt like any of that has happened. So I'm trying to hold loosely, but also just be clear in that stance that this, what Theorem is, please play, please explore, please take this somewhere else. But there is a core that can't be altered. Or if it were altered, it would feel like it would be a betrayal of something that I couldn't bear personally.
Yeah, Liz, thanks for clarifying the composition of the group, which is called the Theorem Collective. And I think the balance and the kind of delicate challenge here is that this also cannot be merely an adaptation of Theorem. I mean, everyone in the group is committed to envisioning it as its own work of art. And it will be in a performative modality. And I think that as we put this collective together, we were bonded by and came together around a shared aesthetic. And that has guided the development of the work all the way along. And I think where it could have detoured is if the different artists wanted to interpret the work in very divergent ways from its sort of aesthetic and conceptual form. And so it's been an extraordinary experience for all of us to work this way. It's required, not just requested, enormous patience and longitudinal strength. And, of course, now as we are getting ready to really present it, and the work has come to this really, I think, magnificent kind of early, like nascent form and moment, we're in COVID. So, Angel, as someone who runs a theater, you understand the challenges of that. But nonetheless, I think we'd be really excited that the next time this group gets together on a Zoom or in a discussion in person, we are presenting Theorem, as a work of art by the Theorem Collective.
If I can ask one.
Oh, please do.
Very quick question, because I know we have to go to Q&A. I'm wondering about the space, Antonia and Liz. You poured over the art book, like decisions about what the cover would look like, what the fabric would be. Watching that translation into this book was just as painstaking. As you move to a performance, what do you think about the space? Does it have to have are there any specific things you want to make sure that the space is?
Well, that's an interesting question, because originally we were taken by and inspired by the space of Farnsworth House out in Plano, that beautiful glass modernist Mies van der Rohe box of a home, being there, experiencing it, thinking about it, and the transparency of that space in place, and how it is impossible to hold secrets. And over the months and the conversations that we've all had, there have been many conversations about where this might be and where it might first be, and what different emotional resonances it might offer in different spaces. And we're really interested still in exploring those various iterations and physical manifestations, I think, of the images, the story, the sound that Eliza and Clara have created in space and time.
Yeah, and these just beautiful, subtle, nuanced animations of the images by Joseph Meredith. And I think now we're really thinking more expansively about the different kinds of places, stages, buildings, venues it could present at, and also imagining the possibility of it adapting to and integrating some of the physical and environmental aspects of whatever space it would be presented in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think so. There are a few questions in the chat, which I'll do my best to sort of round up. Or if you skim one and see one that piques your fancy, then go ahead for it. But because there were, you've already spoken a little bit about how the collaboration evolves as you begin to take what is at the moment a collaboration between the two of you, and then expand it up to 6, and what happens in that process. So there's a question in the chat with a +1 after it about trust being an essential component of artistic collaboration. And do you remember when that trust solidified for each of you, or was it already in place before you began working together? It also, as you, Liz, talk about the Plano house and its transparency, it seems like the relationship between trust and secrets is also an important part of what the collaboration allows and allows for. So I would love to hear any of your thoughts about that.
You want to start, Antonia?
God, trust. You know, I just would even step back. I'd start with relationships. You know, I would say if I had to think overarchingly about my own work, it is about relationships. And I mean, certainly relationships between ideas and images and concepts and such, but just as importantly, between people. And so, and then when you engage in collaborative work, those relationships need to be based on trust, even more than maybe liking someone. I mean, you have to be honorable and trust them, and so I think for Liz and me, that was something very critical to I think our almost like leap or dare of moving into this, I'm sorry about this, moving into this project together. And same as we began to form the collective. I think we are all artists that would have not just not be inclined to work with artists that other artists they didn't trust, but just wouldn't be working with them. So I guess to be brief, it is fundamental for me. And I don't think I could make my best work and be my most generous, generative, sharing self, which is essential to collaboration, without that.
Yeah, yes. And I think for me, equally, as part of that, Antonia and I knew each other for 12 years before we decided to do this, and talked about it loosely and danced around it. But there was a moment when, I took the images from Antonia. She went home to Chicago. I was out on the Cape, and I took a lot of time. I took a lot of time to come back to my life here from our intense connection and synergy, which is so vital and exciting, and to come back to my non-Antonia self and to think about those images and what they might say, and to respond genuinely. And once I really responded honestly to those images and discovered what I wanted to say, what they suggested for me, which surprised even me, I thought, oh crap, crap. Now, what if this story isn't, what if this story that's now affixed to Antonia's images is not anything that she wants affixed to these images, which was a very frightening moment to me. And we never really talked about that exactly. But we moved on. And so I thought, oh, she must be fine with it. And then I thought, oh boy, what about these going into the world? I better think about this, because the making was so separate and was so private. And I think that's something that I treasure in the creation of this project, that it didn't feel like it was on commission. It didn't feel like it was something I was making to be in the world. It was something I was making, and I was engaged with. And then those other considerations of stepping into public view started to intrude. And that's not really about collaboration, but I think it is about the importance of secret space and sacred space and creative exploration in making something that doesn't feel rote and that feels meaningful and risky and genuine.
And Liz, if I can add to that, I'd say that what I've discovered in my own practice over the years, I went to art school at a time when the only meaningful, honorable thing to be was this monolithic artist in your studio. And of course, that space was occupied by men. But what I have learned over the years of my own personal evolution is that if there is a collaborating with people, the right people, in that kind of truthful way has enhanced my work immeasurably, has added to it in ways that I never could have done on my own. And so I seek out, it can be a kind of communion in which the resultant work is exponentially more complex and interesting and layered than maybe your own piece in your quiet studio ever would have been.
Thank you. I think I can perhaps round up a couple questions into one more. And there are a couple of questions here about process. So one, just to Antonia, is about having made artist books before, why you decided to go to Candor Arts for this one. And I think maybe concomitant with that, questions about the order in which the images occur and if they had moved around in the process at all. So perhaps we can do those two together. And then I think we're nearly out of time, but if anyone is desperate to sneak one more in the chat, then this is your chance. But otherwise, let's hear a little bit about process and see where we are.
Yeah, thanks for, and that question is from Helen, I think. Helen, Candor, I personally had a long history with Matt Austin, who was the original founder of Candor. And I worked with Matt in my other life, which was as the executive director of Marwin, an art school for urban youth. You know, I always really admired his work, his craftsmanship, and his ethic. And I was very aware of the work that Candor was doing. And we were so aesthetically aligned. And then, I mean, really, he was interested in taking on this challenge of figuring out, he and his team at Candor, of figuring out the binding of those, you know, cascading, like winnowing signatures. And that was, we were thrilled about that because we saw that as an essential component of the experience and story of Theorem. And, you know, you'll see, those of you who, I hope you all get the trade edition, but how we, you know, tried to, in a much different way, on a much different budget, kind of replicate that winnowing feeling. But anyway, it was, they were just a remarkable press to work with in terms of their craftsmanship and the way they treated their artists. And we were, you know, I think mutually thrilled to make Theorem together.
Yeah, and in terms of images, we did switch around images. The original opening image of the book that Antonia gave me is no longer there. It's gone. We pulled in what is now the opening image. There were a couple of other images that we pulled out. We realized we wanted to space out the narrative a little more. We pulled some other images in. And that was a really exciting and rich part of our collaboration. To start with something on either end and then to really dig in and say, all right, well, what have we made and what needs to happen next? So there was a lot of exchange, reordering, investigation of what those images mean and how they can resonate with the text, and how tonally too, what could be the range of images, what is the tonal range of the text, and how can all of that be brought together as a cohesive whole. So yeah, there's a lot of that conversation.
Yeah, and I do have to say that, you know, we we worked so hard at that, and Liz would have these kind of very like furtive, against all odds, like fly-ins to Chicago for 24 hours. And we would, you know, be in my studio for like 14 hours at a time trying to figure these out. And then she'd go back to the Cape or to Brandeis to teach. And I just want to recount that there was one of these moments when I think we were quite on deadline to make, you know, these final decisions before production. And she was scheduled to fly in the night of the polar vortex.
Oh, yeah.
And add to it, she was coming in on an 11 o'clock at night flight on Spirit Airlines. And I said to her, Liz, you're not, it's not going to happen. And, you know, forgetting, of course, that she's like, you know, an Antarctica explorer and such. So, you know, she made it in, and, you know, we were amongst some of the colorful experiences we had and bringing the book to print and fruition.
Thank you.
You know, I'd like to also mention that here in Chicago, the Art Institute of Chicago and the Joan Flash collection at the School of the Art Institute have acquired copies of the Fine Art Edition. So if you want to see it, you know, you can see it there, as well as I have a couple of copies left at my studio, and Candor has a few copies left.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It is a beautiful book. I'm so pleased everyone could join us this evening. Thank you, Angel, Antonia, and Liz for a really wonderful, warm, genuine, kind conversation. It's a pleasure to have been with you all, and I wish you all good night.
Tina, thank you so much. And Angel, Jesse, and your University of Chicago, and of course the beloved Co-op Seminary bookstores.
Yeah, and thanks for everyone entering the Zoomosphere after work, after hours, and this was really so delightful. I appreciate so much about this and so many levels. So, thank you all.